Welcome back to Play Studios, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining me on a video that I've been looking forward to making since I made this channel. And been kind of biting at the bit to do it recently, but I wanted to have a little bit more time with the product that I will be talking about before I gave my uneducated opinion. So welcome to a brief first impressions of the Fractal Audio AX8. Now the AX8 isn't exactly a brand spanking new product. It's been out for well over a year at this point, and as such I'm just going to be kind of giving my opinion on it and how I'm using it. Not necessarily going to be giving a very detailed comparison with other similar amp modelers. There will be a video coming up where I give a little bit more explanation on that, but because this has been out for a while, there's plenty of other videos of people that make very good comparisons as well as reviews of the individual features and use cases of this thing. Coming up, there will be plenty of videos showcasing this piece of hardware if you are looking forward to it, including patches and general tutorials. But for now, I'm just going to be kind of talking about my experience with it, how much I've enjoyed it in terms of recording and jamming, and what I think of the unit and its value on the market as a whole. Now the AX8 is basically the AX8 2 Ultra, but in a pedal board version with a few more limitations. For instance, you can't run dual amplifiers or dual cab blocks at the same time, but you still get 250 plus amplifiers in the box, over 120 stock cabinets, and you can add your own via the Cab Lab, as well as all of the included effects like chorus, flanger, reverb, but you are missing some things like the tone match feature. Overall, this is just a slimline AX8 that you can control with floorboard switches, which does give it an advantage over the rack mount AX8 depending on your use case, especially if you're just a gigging musician. Otherwise, with the AX8, you have to buy a floorboard controller if you want to use it that way. So you're already a bit ahead with this model if you don't need those certain types of special features like reamping and all that. In terms of I/O, you are not going to be left very wanting with this thing. We have instrument in, which can be padded anywhere from 0 to 18 decibels, which means that even your most loud guitars with active pickups will be accepted with this thing, no problem. All of my guitars can dial in a setting between generally 0 to 12 decibels across my low gain passive pickups and my highest gain active pickups, and it'll work just fine. We have an effects loop, which you can place an effects block in your signal chain to hook up to an external amplifier, power amp, or even recording and use other external effects with it. Very useful feature. You have a few pedal inputs if you want to use it in your signal chain. You have SPDIF out, which is kind of your preferred recording method, I would say, if you're wanting to go all digital. Unfortunately, the USB connection you cannot use as a audio interface like you could the Fractal, Fractal AX8, that is. This is only for controlling it and controlling it through the AX8 software, as well as getting your firmware updates, which is a bit disappointing because there are plenty of competitor products around the similar price range that do have USB audio interface technology, which is a bit unfortunate, but I'm guessing that was a sacrifice they made because they figured the audience for this product would be using this more as a floorboard live piece of equipment rather than recording. But I can say without a doubt that it's still fantastic for recording. It's just a little bit more cumbersome. In terms of the front of the board, we have 8 separate foot switches that will allow you to change scenes or turn off different blocks in your signal chain, and some separate function foot switches. You can scroll and navigate your way through this pedal using all these different knobs, which will do different things depending on where you are in the setup menu or the signal chain. And you have your standard knobs you would find on a regular amplifier like drive, bass, mid, treble, as well as some ones that you may or may not, like depth or presence. It is not very easy to navigate on the pedal itself. That was a limitation that I knew going in. As you can see, this screen is in the neighborhood of a 200 by something hundred pixel display. I don't care because I don't use it. It is a monochrome, just black and green classic LCD, almost said LSD. It's not an LSD display. Maybe that would make it a little more entertaining, but this is an LCD display, and it gets absolutely wrecked by some other pedal boards that are on the market right now that are in the amp modeler class, including like the Line 6 and 11 Rack's own head brush pedals. And while they look a lot better, that was never really an issue for me because I knew I was going to be controlling this thing through AX8 primarily, and that makes up more than enough for me for not having a very good display. I'm sure they cut a lot of costs by doing this, and I just think that's something that if you're going to get into the Fractal family of products, you probably don't care or are aware. Would it be nice? Yeah, I think so, and I'm hoping that their next generation of products at least has something in the neighborhood of like, I don't know, a 540p or 720p display and make it bigger. That way, for those of you that would like to have a nice high-resolution display when you are playing, you can, but for me, it's not really a deal breaker. So it is built like a tank. It's fairly large. It barely fits on a standard size pedal train pedal board. I could fit this as well as my wah pedal. I'm not going to use in that configuration, but I can if I wanted to. And it just feels very premium. Now for $1,300, it better feel pretty premium, but I've paid more for some products that don't feel nearly as good. And of course, none of that would matter if it didn't sound worth a damn, but it sounds more than worth a damn. I chose ultimately the Fractal family of products because of its reputation among the industry and for its accuracy in amp and especially cabinet modeling. While I love a traditional tube and pedal and cabinet and microphone setup as much as the next enthusiast, I just kind of play too many different types of styles to be able to do that affordably. For the cost of a single amp head, I can basically model any sound I want through this pedal and through a quality that isn't sacrificing anything to my ears. And if it is sacrificing anything at all, it's pretty much negligible by the time you get it in a mix or you're playing through all these different types of house speakers, whatever application it is more than close enough. And it really does capture a real tube amps feel. That's one thing that I felt modeling was never good at when it first came out, even if it did have a really nice sound. I remember back in 2008 when Meshuggah released Obzin and Friedrich Thorndahl put up a Line 6 pod patch that he had used to record the album. And people downloaded it and was like, well, it kind of sounds like crap on its own, but it definitely just feels like crap. And that's something that I don't get with these types of amp modelers of this tier. Whether you're going with this or Kemper, even Line 6 Helix, I feel like they're just on such a different level. And you really do feel that type of sloppy, almost feedback that you'd get from a tube amp. Being able to control different parameters like power sag, hardness of the power tubes, it's just a freedom that you can absolutely get lost in. And that is a downside of these types of amp modelers because you are exposed to models that were basically built using software and emulation and that don't exist in real life. So of course you could tweak it to your heart's desire. And for people like me, that can be a bad thing. I've spent many sessions with this thing doing nothing but just tweaking settings, playing 3 riffs over and over to see what it sounds like because I've never had that freedom before. It's not like that I could just open a dual rectifier, change around some wiring, and hope for the best and get something that sounds good over and over. Whereas with this, a couple clicks of the mouse and you have a completely different sound than anyone's ever had in the world. So that can be a good thing if you are a huge tone freak like that. It can also be your biggest weakness if you are trying to get just something satisfying immediately. And if I had to give a general timetable for this thing, and I think pretty similar to other products as well, I would say you can get a really good tone in 5 minutes if you know what you're doing as far as navigation goes. You can get a supremely amazing tone in 30 minutes, and it might take you a few days to get your tone if you keep playing with it. But I think you will get your tone if you just stick with it. All that's fine and dandy, but is it worth its asking price of $1,300 US? I would say absolutely, just because of the proposition value that you would be spending probably twice as much, if not more, for a decent guitar rig that can only do one sound or a few variations of one sound. Whereas in just the multiple scenes of one preset, you can do multiple sounds. You can switch between amp heads and cabinets in one preset. And then you have 64 banks of presets and 8 presets each and 8 scenes each. You can absolutely get lost in the endless combinations of tones you can create in this thing. So for me, there is no better value for the quality that you are receiving. Sure, I can play with free VSTs and software plugins all day, but it really comes down to the feel, even more than the sound, and I think they really nailed it. And when you have so many high-profile touring bands that have replaced effectively their entire guitar rigs or a great chunk of it with Fractal audio products, that speaks volumes to me, and that's why I ultimately ended up with a Fractal product. Not to say the other ones aren't good, but when you have people that have been, used to their tone for 30 years and say, you know what, AX8 is good enough for me, it's probably good enough for us plebeians as well. In terms of tones, I've been playing everything from southern rock to progressive metal on this thing, and have been getting just otherworldly tones that I've never really heard come out of my own equipment before. And it's kind of like rediscovering guitar playing all over again. So if you've never experienced amp modeling like this, I would definitely recommend, even if you do have a full amp setup, to get something if you are interested in it, because it does open up a whole entire new realm of guitar playing for you, I feel like. So yeah, my first impressions, I've had this thing about a month, and it feels like a lot longer than that because I've been playing with it so much. I've recorded a little bit of material with it and just been jamming and making patches the rest of the time. I love it. Absolutely my favorite piece of equipment that I have that isn't an instrument. And it's one of those things that I can see the improvements, I can point out the areas, but honestly don't think that I will be interested for more than like 5 years for an iteration of the product, because they've nailed it so well. So yeah, please do stay tuned, because we're going to have plenty of more content with this box here, including patches of famous players, tutorials, and general tips and tricks. But for the time being, go try out this thing if you can. Good luck trying to find one to try out, because they are in such limited quantities. But yeah, amp modelers, I think they're the future myself, and really glad that I've hopped on the train no later than I did. So yeah, let me know what you think below. If you have experience with any of the other amp modelers, or if you have a Fractal audio product, tell me what you think. And we'll see you down the road with some more detailed content on the AX8. Thanks for watching. Bye.